An infant passed away while resting against his loyal canine companion. What the dog did in the weeks that followed left everyone who witnessed it completely devastated. They thought it was simply another tranquil afternoon, a serene moment, with a baby nestled against soft, protective fur. But when the quietness grew unbearable, their world collapsed in seconds. What this faithful dog did after losing his smallest friend left even experienced emergency personnel speechless. This is about a devotion so profound, it never comprehended the meaning of farewell. Asterisk, asterisk, the sacred bond, asterisk, asterisk. The home carried that distinctive stillness that exists only when genuine love occupies a space. A solitary lamp illuminated the family room sofa in warm amber tones, where the infant slumbered. His tiny form was pressed against Max's thick coat. The large dog's broad chest expanded and contracted like a protective shield beneath the child's delicate body. Their breathing synchronized perfectly, creating a rhythm of complete trust. "Just observe them," Elena whispered from the entrance, her voice blending weariness with affection. "He absolutely refuses to sleep unless Max is positioned right there." James ran his fingers through his hair, still dressed in his crumpled office attire. "He's an animal, Elena. You're treating him like a professional caregiver." "He essentially is," she responded gently, a soft smile touching her exhausted features. "And truthfully, he's more attentive than most people would be." This had evolved into their nightly tradition, a cherished pattern neither could fathom disrupting. The instant Elena positioned the baby in his bassinet, Max would approach with clear purpose, arrange his substantial body alongside the tiny one, and settle his head near enough that their exhaled breaths mingled in the subdued lighting. If the infant merely shifted, Max's paw would edge closer. If he fussed, the dog would produce soft sounds and press his muzzle gently until tranquility returned. The neighbors had cautioned them. Naturally, canines can develop jealousy when an infant enters the household, they'd mentioned, with knowing expressions. But Max had never displayed even the slightest hint of resentment. He followed Elena from room to room, anticipating the baby's delicate sounds, anticipating the unspoken permission to position himself beside his small human. One rain-soaked evening, Elena discovered them on the sofa once more. The infant was stretched across Max's muscular shoulder, his impossibly tiny hand gripping the dog's velvety ear as though it were his only connection to the world. She retrieved her phone, unable to resist documenting it. "I'm convinced you two will capture hearts everywhere someday," she murmured, preserving the moment. Max's ear twitched slightly, but otherwise he remained absolutely motionless. When James entered, his expression carried the burden of an exhausting day. "You're still awake?" "I can't sleep," Elena confessed, her gaze never departing from the pair. "His breathing pattern seems unusual tonight, slightly irregular." James dismissed it with the casualness of someone too drained to worry. "It's just a storm. Allow them to rest. You require rest as well." The morning that changed everything. The hours passed slowly. Rain hammered against the glass like a relentless clock, counting down moments they were unaware they were losing. Elena dozed in the armchair, her eyes partially open, continuing to observe them both. When daybreak finally emerged, she awakened to something more disturbing than noise. She awakened to its complete absence. No gentle cooing sounds, no small grunts or sighs, just a stillness that registered as fundamentally wrong in her core. The infant's miniature fist rested open against Max's fur, fingers loose. For one hopeful instant, she believed they were both simply immersed in deep slumber. Then she observed Max's head shifting slightly, repositioning. But the infant's chest showed no movement whatsoever. "James," her voice fractured like shattering glass. "James, come here immediately." He rushed in, half awake, vision unfocused. "What's happening?" "He's not breathing." She touched the infant's shoulder softly, then with increased urgency. "Wake up, sweetheart. Please, please wake up." Max whimpered, bewildered, prodding her hand as though inquiring what was occurring. James's complexion drained completely. Dial emergency services immediately. Elena's hands trembled so intensely she could scarcely hold the phone. He feels cold, she cried into the device. Oh God, he's freezing. The operator's composed voice disappeared behind the wail of approaching emergency vehicles. James placed quivering fingers against the infant's tiny chest, his voice fragmenting. Come on, little one. Just breathe for us. Please breathe. Max barked once sharp, frantic, then pressed his heated head against the infant's torso, frantically attempting to transfer his warmth. When the paramedics burst through the entrance, the family room transformed into controlled chaos. One of them extended toward the infant. Max's growl began deep, his complete body quivering. Restrain that dog, one paramedic commanded. James grabbed Max's collar, but the dog's muscles were steel. He won't harm anyone, James begged desperately. I promise you. They elevated the infant away. Max surged forward with a howl so primitive, so utterly devastated that it paralyzed everyone momentarily. Elena collapsed to the floor, her cry piercing through the sirens like a blade. Please, please allow me to accompany him. Her voice disintegrated into something barely recognizable. She crawled ahead, extending desperately for the gurney as they maneuvered it toward the exit. That's my child. Please don't transport him alone. One paramedic attempted to intercept her. Ma'am, you cannot. I must. She sobbed so intensely the words barely materialized. He despises being isolated. He becomes terrified. He requires his blanket. He requires me. The younger medic paused, remorse crossing his youthful face. Ma'am, he murmured, voice heavy with compassion. We'll attempt everything within our power. You have my word. The entrance sealed shut, creating a vacuum in the atmosphere where sound previously existed. The reverberation of Elena's screams ricocheted off the surfaces and vanished. She collapsed near the entryway, palms pressed against the frigid floor. Her respiration arrived in irregular gasps, each inhalation more acute and agonizing than the previous. James, she whispered into the void. Why did I permit him to sleep there? I should have monitored him. Max circled the corridor, scratching urgently at the entrance, his complete body trembling. He pressed his nose to the precise location where the infant scent still remained and released a prolonged, haunting whimper that saturated the space with something far more terrible than silence. The unbearable truth. When James returned 90 minutes afterward, the sound of his footfalls communicated everything. Elena elevated her head gradually, vision swollen and crimson. Hope ignited once in her expression, then extinguished the instant she witnessed his face. He remained silent. He was incapable. His shoulders drooped under invisible mass. Hospital identification still wrapped around his wrist. Elena's lips quivered. No. James took one stride, then another, until he collapsed alongside her on the floor. They attempted everything, he whispered, voice vacant. They attempted everything, Elena. The scream that erupted from her chest penetrated straight through him, the tight that persists, even when breath expires. She pounded her fists against his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. He was perfectly healthy. He was absolutely fine yesterday evening. Why didn't I awaken? Why didn't I monitor him? James simply embraced her, his own tears descending into her hair, repeating her name continuously, as though uttering it might somehow retrieve her from the precipice. Max pressed himself against them both, positioning his head on Elena's knee, whining softly. She rotated toward him and immersed her face in his dense fur, body convulsing violently. The residence that once resonated with joy now felt like a crypt. The vigil of grief. Evening arrived once more. Identical sofa, identical lamp, but more subdued now, as though even the illumination was mourning. Max's respiration occupied the space, consistent but labored. His muzzle rested precisely where the infant's head once positioned. Every several minutes he released a small whine, soft, inquiring, devastating. James observed him from across the shadowed space. They claim animals forget rapidly, he muttered with bitterness. I suppose they were completely mistaken. Elena brushed a tear from her cheek. He's anticipating him to awaken. Max elevated his head, ears rotating toward the corridor, as though perceiving something only he could detect. Then he reclined once more, protecting the silence. They believed the most difficult part had concluded, but Max hadn't even begun to comprehend what loss authentically signified. Days of searching. For days following the memorial service, the residents scarcely seemed to respire. Window coverings remained closed. The infant's space remained an altered bassinet immaculate, blanket arranged precisely in the corner. Every occasion James attempted to relocate something, Elena prevented him. Not yet, she whispered. His scent still lingers. Max barely consumed food. He would remain positioned near the nursery entrance from morning until evening, tail immobile, vision fixed on the small white bassinet. Sometimes he whimpered. Other occasions he simply reclined there, ears responding to sounds that existed exclusively in his recollection. At night time, Elena maintained the infant monitor activated even though the bassinet remained vacant. She insisted it assisted her sleep, but every occasion Max shifted, the monitor activated, and she'd awaken anticipating to perceive a cry. Only silence responded. One morning, James discovered Max positioned inside the bassinet itself, his head resting precisely where the infant's chest once expanded and contracted. The sight twisted his stomach with anguish. "Elena," he murmured, voice fragmenting. "Observe him. He's deteriorating." Elena's response arrived as barely audible. "Aren't we all?" The desperate decision. The veterinarian's words were compassionate but resolute. Canines experience grief as well, but he requires distance to recover. James agreed reluctantly. Just for several days, he stated, though his voice wavered. The boarding facility will provide excellent care. We both require time to process. Elena hesitated, fear in her vision. He'll believe we're abandoning him too. James glanced away, unable to encounter her gaze. Perhaps it's the only method any of us will discover peace. That afternoon, they transported Max to the small pet facility on the town's periphery. The woman at the reception area smiled sympathetically when she witnessed Elena weeping. "Don't be concerned, ma'am. We'll maintain him comfortable and secure. You can bring something recognizable if you desire." Elena carefully positioned the infant's green blanket in Max's bed. The dog inhaled it profoundly, then gazed up at her with those impossibly profound questioning eyes. She knelt down and embraced his face in her hands. "We'll return, understood, just for several nights. Please behave well." Max licked her wrist once, slow, uncertain, almost requesting her to reconsider. When they rotated to depart, he barked once, sharp and bewildered, and attempted to follow. The staff gently restrained him. Elena didn't glance back. If she had, she wouldn't have possessed the strength to walk away. What they discovered that evening, a facility worker perceived disturbing sounds emanating from Max's space, frantic scratching, desperate whining. He went to investigate, anticipating the dog simply required outside access. What he discovered made him freeze in position. Max had dragged his blanket to the corner and was excavating frantically into the surface. His paws were raw and hemorrhaging, claws damaged, the plaster shredded and dispersed across the floor. Underneath the torn material, the worker identified a small cavity, and inside, positioned against the cold concrete, the edge of the infant's green blanket. Every single evening afterward, Max repeated the ceremony. He consumed only sufficient to survive, then anticipated until the illumination extinguished before resuming his search, scratching, excavating, frantically seeking what he'd lost. When the staff contacted Elena and James several days later to explain, Elena erupted into tears immediately. In the reception area, "He was searching for him," she whispered through her sobs. "He believed his infant was concealed somewhere inside the surfaces." Coming home, they transported home in crushing silence. The rear seat was vacant. The leash remained folded and unused. James clenched the steering mechanism until his knuckles transformed white. "We should never have abandoned him there," he stated quietly. voice dense with regret. Elena nodded, staring vacantly through the window. He's the only one who continues believing he's returning. When they opened the vehicle entrance, Max jumped out before they could even unfasten the leash. He sprinted straight into the residence, down the corridor, directly to the nursery. He pressed his head against the bassinet and released a sound neither of them had ever perceived before, a deep, aching moan that ascended into a cry so human it shattered them both. Elena covered her mouth, tears streaming. He remembers everything. Jean's voice fractured completely. He never forgot, not for a single instant. Max circled the bassinet 3 times, then reclined with the green blanket positioned under his chin. His eyes fluttered, but sleep wouldn't arrive. He simply remained there, inhaling the vacant air where his infant used to exist, finding peace. That evening, the infant monitor activated once more. Elena was half asleep when she perceived a faint rustle, a low, consistent hum. Max's breathing, slow and rhythmic, directly beside the bassinet. It sounded almost identical to before, when it was the infant positioned there instead of just a memory. She walked to the nursery entrance, her heart heavy. Moonlight spilled through the window coverings, bathing everything in soft silver illumination. Max gazed up at her once, his tail producing a single weak thump against the floor. Then he lowered his head back onto the blanket. James approached behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. He's protecting him once more. Elena nodded, tears sliding silently down her face. He doesn't comprehend he's departed. Perhaps that's a blessing, James whispered. Perhaps believing he's still present is the only method Max can survive this. They remained there for an extended time, the 3 of them suspended in that sacred quiet. The morning light. The following morning, Elena opened the nursery window for the first occasion in weeks. Sunlight crept across the floor, touching the bassinet, Max's fur, and her trembling hands. She knelt beside him and stroked his head gently. You don't have to continue searching anymore, Max, she stated softly, voice fragmenting. He's right here with us. He always was. Max exhaled profoundly, his eyes closing gradually for the first occasion in days. His chest expanded and contracted with a calmness that had been absent since that terrible morning. The atmosphere felt lighter somehow, the silence gentler, as though something invisible had finally discovered peace. Elena rotated to James, fresh tears glistening. We'll maintain his blanket here for both of them. James nodded, his voice barely maintaining together. He earned it. That evening, Max slumbered beside the bassinet once more. No scratching, no excavating, no desperate searching, just breathing, consistent and peaceful and certain. Outside, dawn painted the horizon in shades of amber and violet. Inside, the loyal dog dreamed quietly beside the empty bassinet, the green blanket between his paws, forever protecting what was departed, but never truly lost. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe dogs experience loss the way we do? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more profound true stories that remind us what unconditional love truly means. Where are you watching from? Let us know below. If this story touched your heart, please support the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who needs a little hope today. See you in the next story.